Okay, so my book that I have today to talk about is The Diary of a Young Girl, as most people would refer to the Diary of Anne Frank. Um, you've definitely heard of Anne Frank before. I'm not the first person to talk about her. She was a Jew in the Holocaust who went into hiding from age 13 to age 15, and then right before the end of the war, her family was found, and the people who were hiding with her were found, and they were put on the last train out of Holland and went into concentration camps. They were all split up in various ways, Anne with her sister, and she died of typhus, as did her sister, just very, very quickly before the camp was liberated. And while she had been in hiding, and just before she went into hiding, she got a diary for her 13th birthday that looked like this. It's red with this print on it. And then she had multiple other journals that she kept. You can actually buy replicas of this journal from the Anne Frank house. It doesn't have the clasp though. You can see here's the little clasp. They don't sell them with that. I did buy one, and the print was upside down, I will say. But maybe I should have gone and grabbed one to show you. Nay. Maybe I will later, I don't know. Anyways, so point being, she got this journal, she started writing in it, and she decided instead of just writing generally, she wanted to write as if she was writing to a person who she named Kitty. And so we, the reader, are Kitty, and she's writing these letters to us, basically. So it starts out with her just living a very normal 13-year-old girl life. She's talking about her friends at school. She's talking about boys who have crushes on her. And then pretty quickly, just a couple weeks into her getting the journal, she goes into hiding. And her whole entire life changes. Not so dramatically at once, though. It seems like the realization of what just happened to them is a little bit more of a slow burn for her, and she documents the whole way through what life is like in hiding and what life is like during the war for Jewish people. And it's a great book. 10 out of 10, would recommend. I read a shortened version of it whenever I was younger. And then this was my first time reading the book in full. There's been different editions that have been released throughout time. Some were edited out because they talked about sexuality, or they were very harsh things that she wrote about her mother. Those have been edited out in some of the first editions. And then what I understand is that this is all of it. And so all those things are in this book. And you know, I had heard this on the internet before. Jokes that Anne Frank wrote in her diary in regards to Hitler. That's not in this book. I'm not saying for a fact that Anne Frank never made jokes about Hitler, never wrote those down, but that is not in this book. So if you ever see anything saying that Anne Frank was making Hitler jokes in her diary, that's incorrect, as far as I'm aware. Some things that were really interesting, being in hiding, everybody is they're a support system for each other, but also they go through the stress of being in an enclosed space together. And there's food issues, there's issues in regards to everybody sharing a bathroom together and sharing just such a closed space. You're sleeping next to people. You know, she shared a room with a man named Mr. Dussel, and there's no privacy, basically, and there's a lot of frustrations that come with that. And she documents that. She talks about the tension that put on her family, and oftentimes Anne Frank felt like nobody else in the annex understood her. And something she talks about in the very last entry is that she feels like she has two versions of herself, two Annes. One whom everybody sees and who's very lighthearted, very chatty, always joking around, and who is openly criticized very often, and who takes the criticism pretty well. And then the second Anne, the hidden Anne, is her internal self that is more serious, more sensitive, and other people don't see. And her father, Otto Frank, who is the only survivor of the annex, after the war, when he got the diary from Miep and he read it, said that he was close with his daughter when she was alive, and yet it wasn't until he read the diary that he realized that he didn't know her as well as he thought. And he said that given how close they were, the only conclusion that he could really come to is that parents don't know their children as well as they think that they do. And I would maybe go so far as to extend that to say that I don't think that anyone knows anybody else as well as they think that they do. I think that she's on to something, that everybody has a second version of themselves that only they see, their innermost thoughts. And this journal for her was a way of actually documenting that second Anne. And it's a good case for keeping a journal to document your second self. And also, it definitely encourages you to keep a journal yourself. The only reason that we know or care about Anne Frank is because we can read her story. And when you're reading someone's journal, I think that that's the most personal that you can really get of access to somebody. And she died ages ago. But we still know her. We still think about her. She's still having an impact on people. 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. 6 million Anne Franks died in the Holocaust, but we don't have all of their stories. And it's the ability to pass on a story that has kept her alive even after her death. Something that's really cool is that in her book, she does talk about the fact that she wants to be a writer, and something that really inspired her. There was an announcement made for people in Holland to keep journals, and that at the end of the war, they would like to collect people's journals to document what the experience was like. And that really struck her, and she wanted to be a part of that group. And so she was really diligent, keeping her diary, rewriting things, going and editing it. And she talks about her desire to be a writer. And an author, published work. During her lifetime, she was cut too short to get to see that for herself. But she did become an author, just like how she wanted to. And that's all because the diary was saved by Miep, who was one of the people who was hiding the Franks. She had worked with Otto Frank. There's a show on Disney Plus called A Small Light. That show is from the perspective of Miep Gies, what it was like to be hiding Jews during the Holocaust and being in Holland at the time. It's a great show. I would definitely recommend you watch it. Also, on YouTube, you can find speeches that Mead has made. English isn't her first language, but there are speeches that she has made that are in English. So I would definitely recommend going and watching those. Also, Otto Frank learned English, and he's got I couldn't find as much content of him, but he's been interviewed and talked about the diary. And I thought that was really interesting too. I would recommend all of that. She found the diary. She kept it. She was saving it for Anne. When Anne didn't return home from the war, she gave it to Otto Frank. Otto Frank, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. He went through this effort to hide his family. Spent 2 years in hiding with his family. They all get found. He comes home. Every other person in hiding has died. So all that they achieved by going into hiding was 2 extra years of life. And I don't think that that was a waste, because they got those 2 extra years. Granted, it wasn't 2 years the way I'm sure they would have hoped that those 2 years went. If they could have just not had to hide, it would have been better. But it is because of those 2 years in hiding that we have this book that I think is very influential, very informative. We wouldn't have had that if not for Otto Frank. He showed the diary he copied it and showed it to some of their friends after, and one of his friends who worked at a publishing firm said that he didn't have the right to keep it private, but that it is a public document and he should publish it, and so that's why he did. Something else that Anne said in the diary, she talked about there was a window that every once in a while she would be able to go and look out of. Not often, because keep in mind, she couldn't be seen. She said that looking into nature always brought her happiness, and she said that if you ever feel sad or if you ever feel lonely, try to go out in nature and spend time in nature, and you will feel better. And that you can feel God in nature. I thought that was very astute. I feel the same way whenever I get to spend time in nature. And, it was nice to see in the book how, even though there were so many difficult things going on in her life at the time, she still could find joy in small things. Sorry, I'm shaking around. What else? Okay, so the book, something interesting in reading it is that Anne Frank, when you're reading it, you know that she's going to get captured. Anne Frank didn't know that she was going to get found. So it's a very abrupt ending to the book. It just says Anne's diary ends here. That's it. And then that's the end of the book. And then there's an afterword that does give details about what happened to each of the people. Although I will say, her last entry, even though she didn't know it was going to be her last entry, but it does actually close things out very nicely. That's the entry where she talks about the 2 different Annes. It feels very abrupt. You read 2 years of this girl's life, intimate details of her life, and then all of a sudden, no more information, nothing else from her, but you know that she did live on for several months after that. She doesn't tell you the story of getting captured. She doesn't tell you the story of going to the concentration camps. She doesn't tell you the story of getting sick. And she certainly doesn't tell you the story of dying very soon before the camps were liberated. And it makes you think about those experiences that she had after she was captured. And you think about how scared she must have been and how she must have felt, although she couldn't write to us about it. And it's very, very sad. So anyways, it's an amazing book. I would recommend it. I don't think that this was my last time reading it. This was just my first time reading the full book, but I do want to read it again. Lessons learned from Anne Frank. Keep a journal. So, anyways, that's all that I have to say about that.